Now, according to calculations on the remaining carbon budget under the 1.5 degrees scenario in the Paris Agreement, each individual on the planet must have a carbon footprint of a maximum 1 ton in year 2050. This is assuming that the emissions are equally distributed, of course. But today, there is a very small percentage of people that have a clue of what that actually means. And most of them are probably here today, or already involved in the conference virtually. But my guess is that even these people, there are very few of them that have an idea of what kind of lifestyle that would entail, or an apprehension of what kind of changes that are necessary in order to get us there. Now, what if we turn that around? What if we could give everyone in the world a benchmark of their own personal carbon footprint? Then people could work both as individuals and as a collective to lower that footprint over time and to challenge both their own behavior and their consumption habits, but also the companies and the governments delivering these services and these goods. So let us just toy with that idea. My name is Johanna Landberg, and I'm head of impact banking at Doconomy. And with me today, I have
Miguel Naranjo from the UNFCCC secretariat. Nice to be with you.
And Miguel, please, can you tell us a little bit, what is this lifestyle calculator that we are presenting or talking about here today?
Sure, so we developed a lifestyle calculator with the goal of allowing individuals to estimate what is the carbon footprint or the climate footprint of their lifestyle and their consumption habits as a way to hopefully raise awareness, educate, and promote change. The calculator was developed as a collaboration between Doconomy and the UNFCCC secretariat during this last year, and it was presented at Climate Week 2021 a few weeks back.
All right. So what is it then that we want to accomplish with this? Well, at Doconomy at least, we believe that knowledge empowers, and that is only when you have defined your baseline that you can start to make a change for the better and track your own development. The lifestyle calculator lets you as an individual take that first step and to get informed, and by that you have created a foundation for more conscious decision making and given yourself the opportunity to be part of that solution. And this was an idea that we quite quickly realized that we shared with Miguel and the team, and so the project was really born. But then how does it actually work?
So the calculator is available online. You access it, there are around 50 questions in this version. There will be others, there will always be improvement. The current one has around 50 questions, may take you 10-15 minutes to fill in, depending on how much you know about your habits already. And then at the end of the questionnaire, at the end of the session of the answering the questions, you immediately get the result of your footprint, both as a total and per type of source of emissions that you have. And we'll talk about that a little bit more.
All right. So it's actually that you register your emissions by answering questions, right?
Exactly. See, so you have the different questions, and behind it, the calculator is, of course, looking at average emissions associated to the activities that you are calculating about. So, for example, if you're driving a car, the average emission factor for a gasoline car, so for a liter of gasoline is 2.2 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. So you multiply that times the distance that you drive with your gasoline-driven car or powered car, and that gives you the estimated emissions from your use of the car. And it has similar questions for your electricity consumption, for the clothes that you buy, the food that you use. If you have pets, that's coming, right? We don't have pets yet, that's coming. So depending on the different activities, it will use emission factors and multiply by your specific activity and give you the result.
Okay, so now I've been talking a little bit about how it actually works. So let's take a closer look on the rules and boundaries of the calculator. If I can get the slide to switch. There we are. Great. So first of all, when deciding on which emissions actually to include and which categories to choose, we conducted a little bit market research, a literature study, and found what are the hotspots for activities related to individuals' lifestyles. And therefore we have come up with 4 primary categories, which are home, transport, food and shopping in the calculator. Now the questions related to these areas was the outcome of trying to balance sort of the user experience of not going too deep into the details, but still coming out with an exact result for the individual to make it relevant for each and everyone trying the calculator. And this is something that we are still working on, trying to balance the right amount of question to get to a good, a good solid calculator. When it comes to the coverage, the lifestyle calculator aims to follow the greenhouse gas protocol. We know, of course, that the greenhouse gas protocol was not developed per se for individuals, but rather for organizations and states. And it is an accounting standard, therefore, that not always fit the purpose, but we're trying to to follow it as consequently as we can. But in some instances, there will be deviations from this accounting principles, and that is more to illustrate than the purpose of a desired behavior that we want to push with the calculator. But all of these deviations are, of course, clearly stated in the methodology then. And then around which gases we cover, like we said, there are many greenhouse gases out there, and we know that they are they have different potency. For instance, methane, as probably you know here in the audience, are 28 times more potent than carbon dioxide. But we have tried to include them all, the gases that are relevant from the Kyoto Protocol. And then we have used their global warming potential to present the result in carbon dioxide equivalents. But are we then covering everything, Miguel?
See, so you will not find everything in the calculator. As Johanna was saying, you have to find, first of all, a balance between how many questions you want to ask to be specific enough for the person to get a really personal answer, and not asking 500 questions so that people will say, oh no, this is impossible, forget about it. So reaching that balance is sometimes difficult. The calculator that you see today is our first attempt, and there will be further versions. But basically what is not included is emissions associated to the operation of society in general. You know that you are used to hearing country emissions per capita, right? An average German has 10 tons of CO2 emissions per capita. So this refers to the whole emissions of Germany, the whole emissions of the country, not the emissions of one person, one specific person. We wanted this calculator to be the results of the individual person's behavior. So it's not using per capita emissions per country, it's using the activities that you report, that you calculate on to give your footprint. So emissions associated to public services in your country, to change of land use, for example, LULUCF, these are not reflected here because, again, we want the result to be directly related to your behavior, not to the whole society, which is not so easy to influence, and the emissions actually are not directly dependent on you. And the other thing that is not included is, or what we are trying to do is avoid double counting of emissions, especially for products, which is not easy, right? There is not a lot of information out there on this. But we have used numbers that allow us to estimate, if you buy a shirt, these are the emissions from the production and transport, and then these are the emissions from use and disposal. And trying to play with those sources of information to avoid double counting, but still giving you the full impact of you buying that shirt and then disposing of it.
Okay, so now we covered the scope of the calculator. Let's have a little peek inside. Or not, please. Ping.
Yep.
There's maybe, yes, thank you. To look a little bit more on the data side and around the calculations.
Mm-hmm. So one of the challenges is finding the information to make the calculations, right? How much greenhouse gas emissions does it mean to buy a pair of pants or shoes, or having a pet coming later, coming in the future? So sources of information that is credible and that you can have regularly updated in the calculator is difficult to find. So we have gone for publicly available information from recognized organizations in the area, so national governments, international organizations. The majority of the data that you will find is based on DEFRA. Very good that we are in the UK. So it comes from DEFRA's database of emission factors, which is one of the most complete that exists. But as much as possible, we have also tried to bring in data from other countries, you know, the US EPA, other European agencies, the World Bank, etc., trying to cover as specifically as possible all countries in the world. But again, that is limited depending on the availability of data. Then we also had to make some assumptions, right? You have some data about the average heating consumption of a German person or a Swedish person in their country, but then you don't really know if that average applies to every person, right? Obviously it doesn't. So there needs to be a series of assumptions in the calculations before. We ask you some questions about your habits, for example, around heating, to be able to adjust to your personal behavior. But again, there are assumptions that you need to make to arrive at the final number for you. Yes, I already mentioned the averages. In the cases where we don't have data for a specific country, then sometimes we take average for similar countries in the same area of the world, of the similar level of development, as a way to approximate the country for which we don't have data. Where we have country-specific information, of course, we include that, and we are sure that in the years to come, this information, country-specific one, will be more readily available, and the calculator is already built in a way that we can simply plug in the information as it comes.
All right. So I guess now you're curious about what has happened since the release. Well, the best way to tell this story is, of course, to look at the data. And even though we've only been live a couple of weeks, so, you know, take this with a pinch of salt, we have some results, like in, you know, the Eurovision. Oh, no, now it went all wrong. Yeah, well, this is technique for you. I'll talk a little bit in the meantime.
There you go.
Here we are, again, back at the interesting map. Bit of a color there. If we start by looking at the reach of the calculator, we are today actually extremely proud that we have reached as far as 99 countries, users in 99 countries, covering all of the continents, which is quite impressive if you ask me, since we've only been live for a couple of weeks. Here you see the ranking. We have the most amount of complete sessions down here in Mexico. As number second, we have Germany, then Sweden, maybe not surprisingly, as Doconomy is Swedish-based, is a number 3, and then UK as a number 4, and then actually Myanmar as the number 5. So the reach is quite good, and as one of the goals for this calculator was to have this as a tool provided to everyone to be able to compare your carbon footprint between countries, because that was one of the big challenges we saw before launching this project, that most of the calculators out there were very nation specific, and therefore you couldn't compare the result of a German calculator with that of a Swedish or a UK calculator. But this one covers it all, so that's why we're really glad. However, we can see that there are some white spots still on the map here, for instance in Africa, but that also tells us where we need to focus our efforts for the next version, I would say. And if we then go to do I dare press again the next we do is this manually. The next map, here you can see the average carbon footprint based on the input from our users. So here you can see the countries highlighted. We have Russia here, where they have quite a high carbon footprint, around, well, their average is 17 tons per person, compared again here to the much lower carbon footprint of Myanmar. And then we also have the UK at checking in at 11 tons. So this is going to be really interesting to see what the sample looks like given more sessions, and also if we can in the future track who will be able to, or who is it that is using this service. And that is something that our team is really, really excited about getting their hands onto this data. It's of course completely anonymized, so we're not tracking individuals here, just the rough data. But what we can learn from it and how we can help us improve the calculator. In addition, we are also now initiating the work on the next version of the calculator, where we have the ambition to make it even more precise, but also more user-friendly. And we will also focus more of our efforts on actually nudging the user onto what you can do as a next step when you have your results, because that is really, then you've created your baseline, but then you want to move towards lowering your carbon footprint, and then people would like to know what to do. So, Miguel, can you just maybe round this up? What is then the final reflection here of so far that we have come?
So maybe two things. One, maybe the fact that you see Africa not very well represented in results yet, and maybe some other developing countries as well, is not so surprising and not so critical, because these countries are usually the ones that have the lower per capita emissions, right? It's usually us living in developed countries that have the higher level of emissions usually. So it's good to see that at least from those areas of the world there is already good access. But we'll be working in trying to increase also data and usage in other countries. And then the other thing is, when you develop these calculators, people who like numbers immediately ask you, how did you get to that? Where is your methodology? Right? So we're happy to say that the methodology being used behind this is completely public. You can see all of the assumptions that have been used, the exact calculations, the sources that we're using for all of them. So as I said, sometimes you need to balance between asking 1,000 questions to get a very precise result, and then actually counting on people that they are going to answer 1,000 questions, right? So that balance is difficult. The same applies to the credibility of the calculator, right? You can have information that is very, very specific, right? But will be very, very difficult to get for all the countries. So we are always open to criticism and to suggestions to improve. As Johanna said, we're already working on the next version. So you will see that the methodology will evolve, will improve. The version that you see right now is what we found as currently the best balance to allow people to have a really personalized result without asking 1,000 questions that probably only 2 or 3 people are going to answer in the end.
Well, to curb the global emissions curve and to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement will take tremendous effort. We all know that, everyone that's here know that. And it will also take a willingness to change, business as usual, both from governments, from individuals, as well as companies. And this means both systemic, societal change, as well as on an individual level for people. Neither of us, I think, believe in putting the sole responsibility on any one player here, but this is, a pull and a push game, and we have to work together as a collective. But what we do believe, and why we have developed this product, coming back to it, is that knowledge empowers people. Because the choices that we make, they not only affect our own footprint, but they also influence others. We talk about the butterfly effect sometimes, and ultimately that will, we think at least, affect the demand for goods and services on the market. So therefore we would like to encourage all of you to go in, test the calculator, get informed, and then use your consumer power and your voting rights, basically, to drive that change on the market and to lower your climate footprint in the process. Thank you for us. And I guess,
do we take questions, or?
If there are any questions, I guess we still have some time.
Just a question, is this application free, or is it, do you need to pay it, or is it free?
No, that was one of the goals. We wanted to make it free and available for all. So therefore we have one version up on our website at doconomy.com, but we also have one version up at the UNFCCC website.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So I have two questions. The first is, you talked about how not so much is being done. I mean, in terms of focus on the African continent. I am curious to know, is it because it is, the emissions from the African continent is insignificant and will remain so? The second question I want to ask, when you were rounding off just now, you talked about the need to lower our emissions. But then after, take for instance someone who makes this calculation and ends up with a very extreme figure, is it supposed to make the person feel guilty, or what are the specific ways that the person can choose to act to reduce the number?
I can take the first one.
Yes.
The second one, did you get to?
Yeah, no, maybe we'll get back to you and remove your, but we'll answer the first question first.
So on the first one, Africa, so the reason why there is little uptake is probably that there is not so much communication towards the users in those countries, right? I would say. So the users simply don't know that the calculator is available and are not accessing. But the calculator does have the data to give any African country a result. Yeah. The second question, yes, if you can repeat.
Okay. So the second question is, you talked about the need for people to reduce their emissions after using this lifestyle calculator.
Yep.
I was wondering if there were specific ways which they could get. So depending on what I feed into the system, if I could get specific feedback on what to do to reduce those emissions.
Yes, that is our ambition. So we've just started by we've also introduced actually tips and tricks in the calculator, but in the next version, now they're more general. So in the next version, we will tailor them more to actually feedback on what you have answered in the calculator, so that you will have a tailored profile with tips that are relevant to you.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. I think it's really interesting. I have a question about how to share this data between friends, and that's with the intention to create community. If I am in the range of 15 kilograms or the range that I want, can I create a club of the 15 kilograms? Or how it works, how we can share this with people and start to connect with people from different parts of the world that are living in a lifestyle that somehow has the same range.
Yeah, that is also an area for development for us.
See, one of the things that we have discussed is you can create an account and you can track your progress, right? If you're going to try to take actions to reduce that footprint, you can track your own personal progress. But in terms of sharing information, we have not looked too much, I think, into that yet, because of the confidentiality issue, right? As well, we cannot share information from the users with other users. So we would need to see how the communication around the calculator and acting on the results can be done without breaching any confidentiality, rules or concerns.
I mean more the same person sharing their own results, something like that. But yeah, thank you so much.
Great. Any other questions?
crystal clear. Super.
If
Thank
not,
you.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good. Perfect. Good. So, are you happy?
I'm super happy. Are you happy?
Yes.